Recording.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Uncle Strib. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Miss Emily Powers. Miss Powers. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the people. Just kind of give as deep as the introduction you want to give.
All right. Well, my name's Emily Powers. I'm 26. I grew up in small town Iowa, Indianola. Not very diverse, very your typical Iowa small town. I graduated with like 300 people maybe, and then I went off to University of Northern Iowa for college. And it's in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Also not very large. I went to school originally for social work and kind of fell off, got super depressed in college, ended up with just a liberal arts degree because I barely went to class. Graduated, had no idea what I wanted to do, and currently not still really sure, but here we are.
Already fantastic. So now I want to kind of just let the listeners get to know you outside of what you do in terms of work. And so, like, what you got any hobbies that you're into, like, that you're really passionate about?
Currently I'm really into Sudoku, which
Oh, really?
is
I like
kind of a
Sudoku.
new hobby,
Uh-huh.
but I'm really excited and I've been trying extremely hard to get to level 4 right now, but I cannot solve one.
What's level 4?
It's like, I don't know, it's like the hardest in the book that I got from Dollar Tree.
Oh, you doing like the book? It's not on the app. Like you're writing it.
Yeah, I have to write it.
Oh, I feel like it's harder.
I don't like doing it on my phone. I don't
Yeah.
know.
It's tough because I know when I tried to write it, when you mess up, you got to erase the number, and so I would, half the eraser is gone. It's a
Yeah,
lot
you
of
have to
messing
erase
up.
like the whole thing if you mess up once, but
Now, if you follow Emily on Instagram, you would know she's a huge Iowa fan, right?
like the football team?
Yeah, man.
No.
What? I see you posting them all the time.
No. I like
Stop.
sports, but I'm not like a college sports person. I like the Packers, and that's pretty much
Yeah, I do know the pack. So, yeah, what sports are you into?
football is like probably the top sport. And
Uh,
then
NFL and a little bit of college, or like not really.
like I'll watch college, but I don't have a favorite team.
So when you're reposting Iowa's football stuff, it's just because it's Iowa.
Yeah, because I live here, I gotta support them.
I guess that makes sense.
If I lived somewhere else, I would support that local team.
I'll let it slide.
Okay.
Packers,
Basketball, I don't watch though.
not
I
even
can't.
NBA.
No.
You're missing out. That's to me, that's the sport right there. NBA. That's it's my baby.
Wrestling. I was a manager in high school, so I really enjoy watching wrestling,
Like
which
real
I
wrestling.
think is an Iowa thing, like
Okay.
Midwestern.
So you're talking about
Um,
like actual wrestling, not WWE.
no, I don't watch that.
Okay.
That's like my two main sports though. I'll watch baseball, but I'd rather watch it in person.
Then on TV.
Yeah.
Okay. And then are you a reader by chance?
Oh yeah. I love books like smut and like crime or fantasy.
Okay. All right. Well, now that we kind of got to know who you are, well, the fans, I kind of already know a little bit. I didn't know you graduated 300 people, but in high school. But get to the meat of the conversation. Kind of tell us what your job, what your title is, and kind of how you got into it, and then yeah, just start there. Kind of how you got into what you're doing right now.
Okay, so I am a treatment counselor for kids with mental illnesses at a residential facility. So these kids live there for about like 3 to 6 months. And I kind of got, I don't know, I got into it because that's originally what I wanted to do when I was in college. I went for social work. I always knew I wanted to work with kids, but I didn't want to be a teacher because I'm not smart like that. I cannot teach other people things. And then after college, it kind of fell off because of my own mental health. And I moved to Missouri actually for a little bit. And then I moved back because I realized I really wanted to get into it. I wanted to be closer to home. And so I started at Order Place is what it's called. And I've been there for about 3.5 years now. And so I guess like the daily life at my work, what I do is I work on the unit. So we have 4 houses and we have 8 units. So I work on one of the units. I work with 10 kids specifically, and I like teach them daily life skills. I teach them about like their mental health. I lead groups ranging from like anger management, self-esteem, growth mindset, stuff like that. And then I'm just with them like day to day. So when I'm there for like their breakfast. They spend time, we do groups, then we eat lunch, then we do some more groups, and I like get some free time. I get to play games and hang out with them and like not really focus on why they're there for a little bit. And then they also have normal therapy, which is not with me because I'm not a licensed therapist.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just kind of there for like their everyday life, but then I also have to teach them outside of their therapy, like how to continue what they've learned in therapy and work on all of that. And since I live there, I also feed them and do like the normal day-to-day lifestyle things with them.
Right. And that's so you're there like all day, huh?
Yeah, my normal schedule is probably like noon to 10 p.m. because they go to bed at around 9.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh, and so is it mental illnesses of all kinds, or is it like do they group them to like similar branches, or how does that work?
So it can be any mental illness. A lot that we see really is like major depressive disorder, RAD, and some like autistic kids come through, ADHD type stuff. And I work with 10 to 17, and it can be boys, girls, and they don't really group them in any sort. So you can get one kid who's like, could be schizophrenic when he's older, along with some other kid who just maybe has some like substance abuse issues, but they're all in the same house. We don't separate them by any sort of
Right.
mental illness.
And so I guess you kind of answered this already, but I always like to ask, like, was it your plan A? Was it like plan B, or what was your plan A or B? Um, what did you, because you kind of say you didn't really have an idea. Was there something you thought that you maybe wanted to get into before what you got into now, or
Yeah, like originally, I guess when I first went to college, I went for social work, but like my end goal, I wanted to work with like adoption and like kids in the foster care system. And then, like I said, I got a little skewed with my own mental health in college. And when I left, I hadn't really applied myself anywhere. Like
Mhm.
I didn't really know what I wanted to do at that point, and I just didn't know what type of job. So I just went on to work with my family at their business in Missouri. And then when I moved back to Iowa, I kind of decided I didn't really want to be in like the DHS type role. I don't want to take kids out of houses. I
Right.
didn't think that would be good, like mentally for me at the time. And so I just stumbled upon residential. I had new people in my past who had worked there. And so, not really my first choice,
Right.
not really my second, I guess, at the moment either, but it worked out.
Okay. And then so from the position you are now, is there any type of like moving up, or like are there any opportunities to I guess move up the ranks, for lack of a better phrase? But you know what I'm trying to say, or like where can you go from here if you wanted to continue to like pursue your career in this field?
Right. So, like, my actual title is like milieu treatment counselor. And so, personally, like at my job, it's you can move up to a primary role, is what it's called. and that's kind of like a leadership role, which that is currently what I am. So
Mhm.
I've already moved up in that sense. And then after that, really, people who work in this field in the residential home, a lot of like my coworkers are going back to school to become therapists. So kind of in the specific role that I'm in, if you're not going to go back to school to be a counselor or an actual therapist, pretty much primary is like your highest role.
Right, like your ceiling, pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, they have like administration offices and whatnot that you could
Hmm.
go into from there, or like obviously I have a supervisor, but there's only 4 of those on campus and they rarely come open, so that would probably be like the top tier for me at this point at the job I'm in.
So, are you thinking about going back to school?
No, I personally could never go back to school. It made me so depressed and I hate
Um,
classes.
so you just have your bachelor's, right?
Yeah.
No, so there's no chance of a master's or PhD.
I don't think like maybe when I'm like in my 30s and stable, but like I go to therapy right now, even like I think
Right,
everyone should go to therapy, but
right.
I just don't think in
For
my
you,
own head I could not do it because I would also need to work. Like I have student loans already and it's
right.
just not
A lot of
possible.
stress. No,
Yeah.
that makes sense. So what would you say is what's the toughest part about the not your specific job, but the industry as a whole with the whole residential the whole like residential setup that you notice or something like that.
I mean, the most obvious one I think is like burnout. A lot of people go into this field like not realizing their own mental health and their own
Oh,
trauma.
mm-hmm.
And then they go in and you can't help others until you are ready to help yourself.
Right,
Like,
right,
and so people just get burnt out so fast because they're taking on like what these kids are telling them. They're taking on their like the kids' trauma plus their own trauma, and it you just can't do that.
right.
You can't take it home
Oh,
with you.
yeah, that makes sense. Now getting like more personal, what do you think for you and your day-to-day task? What's the hardest part for like your specific like what you do? Like what do you say is the hardest part of your specific job?
Mm,
Or maybe not hard, but like maybe something the most frustrating or the most difficult.
yeah. I think the thing that was the hardest for me personally is like learning not to take what these kids say to heart because you're gonna get cursed out, you're gonna get punched, kicked, like everything from these children at the job that I do. And
Hmm.
a lot of people will go home just like crying about it. And like, this kid doesn't know you. They're here
Yeah,
for almost, like 6 months. You can't take what they're saying personally and take it home and then bring it back to work and hold a grudge.
right. You gotta let it go.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. That's a interesting, great insight. Now, on a more positive note, what's the best part about the industry, and then the best part about your specific job?
In the industry, I mean, helping people is great.
Hmm.
That's like why I wanted to go into this. The reward after when you see someone doing awesome is like amazing. About my job specifically is like kind of going along with that. When you see a kid discharged from Orchard Place, it's awesome. Like when they call you or they email you back and they're like, "Hey, this is what I'm doing with my life now. I have a job. I go to therapy still. I'm really thriving. Like I don't have these problems with my parents anymore." And it's great to see people just like grow and change and be able to move on with their lives.
Right.
Like I think it gives me hope for a lot of people.
Okay. That actually provokes another question. So, and obviously, if there's stuff that I ask that you can't talk on, feel free to say, it's classified information or you can't say. But like that brings up how well is the turnaround rate, or like how well. So let me ask you a series of questions. So let's say you have a kid that comes in with a mental illness, right? On average, is there like a set time that they're there for? Is it like a program that's a set amount of time, or is it based on their like personal development or progress?
Yeah, so it's all based on like their personal progress and development and how well they do in therapy.
Okay.
Also, it's
Okay.
very based on insurance because unfortunately, if their insurance isn't going to cover them and they're like acting like an angel while they're in treatment, they're going to be like, oh, well, they're not acting out, so we're going to kick them off the insurance, which sucks. But a lot of it is based on their personal growth.
Okay. So what would you say on average you think that the average kid spends in the program, or is program the right word?
Yeah.
They spend in the program.
So right now our average day is 3 to 6 months, but I see a lot of kids leaving after like 4 months is probably what I would think right now.
And then so after 4 months, so how do you guys quantify? So how do you determine when to discharge them out of the program? Like, how do you quantify the amount of progress needed for you to be like, for you to feel comfortable as a counselor to be like, hey, they've made this much progress, I think they're okay to leave and start doing things on their own, or obviously with the help of their parents, but kind of doing things more independently?
Yeah, so they have treatment goals while they're there. So in order like for them to meet their progress needs, it's them reaching those certain goals, which their goals are set with their therapist and usually determined through that and not really through me as a counselor.
Okay. That makes sense. Oh, just some thought-provoking questions. I might have had another one. Can just this is off script, but could you talk on how important? Because I know a lot of people don't like talk about this. There's not a very talked upon topic. Can you talk on how important mental health is, especially at such a young age with kids?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, personally, like I had a lot of mental health issues growing up, and like I had a lot of problems with my dad specifically, and I remember not really being able to process all that stuff and not opening up about it. And so I think it has affected me way later down the road now, and that's what I go to therapy for, is to process my childhood trauma. And so in order for like our kids today, like you need to be able to put them in these situations where they are able to get the help without having to ask necessarily, because they're just kids. They're not going to ask. They don't know what these overwhelming feelings and emotions are. And especially if they have like a hard upbringing or their parents, like one parent's gone, even just like divorce can be really hard on someone's mental health if they don't get the proper treatment and the proper help in the time, because it's going to come back later on and it could be a whole different mental health issue by that time, and getting them help then is going to be even harder.
Right. So the earlier the better.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I do know, I've read some articles about how if you have obviously like childhood trauma, obviously it's bad when it happens then as a child, but that you talking about when you get an adult, it could lead to so many more things or problems down the road, because if it's not taken care of then. So I just just wanted somebody in this field to educate the listeners, like it's a real thing. It's a real thing that should be discussed, especially with parents. Everybody wants their kids to be as happy as possible they can. So what's some advice you would give someone who wants to get in the position you're in? Let's say somebody's listening, they want to be a treatment counselor for kids at a residential facility. Sorry if that's not the right term, but what was some advice you would give them to help get to that position?
Advice I would say before you get into the field: one, make sure you have your own therapist, because I did not have that working into this, and I so much more. And two, just don't take everything so personal. They're just kids. Come to work every day with a new mindset.
All right. Fantastic. If you're listening, take notes. Take notes. Now I want to get, this is kind of like my, wrapping up. What's 3 keys to success? I'm trying to word this to make it fit the discussion, but what are 3 keys to success for, how about this? I'll set this up. Let's say you have a parent, right, that has a child with mental illness. And let's say they're not at that stage to where they're ready to seek outside help, but they need 3 keys to success to help them, to help their kid through whatever the mental illness is. What's some like advice or key success that you think would help the child? That does that make sense? I feel like I'm not making any sense at all.
So like to help your kid, but you're not willing to ask for other people's help yet?
Or yeah, they're not to that point. Obviously, I feel like one of the key success is swallow your pride and go get the help. You know, I feel like that's one. But yeah, just something like, or just something that they can do at the house in tandem with seeing a therapist. You know, some things that they can help and, you know, and to complement the therapist, you know what I'm saying? Something like that.
So, I mean, open communication is a huge thing. I think parents don't realize that like kids hear and see everything that's going around. So you need to be open to listening to what they have to say about something and taking their feelings to heart. And like their feelings are valid.
Right.
Like, sure, some of them might be escalated and way out of control, but they're valid. And you need to like take a step back and be like, okay, I hear you and I see you and I accept your feelings and like move forward. Because if you're not willing to have open communication with your child, you're not always right. Like sometimes children are very insightful. And so I think that's something big for like parents, along with like swallowing the pride thing. Like you're not always right. You need to listen to what your kid has to say.
Right.
Another like helpful tool that I've kind of learned. So it's kind of silly if you think about it. I don't know. When I first started doing it, it was silly, but so we have this thing called community meeting that we have to do. And so it's questions. So I would say, how are you feeling? And you would have to give me a feeling word, which is not good or okay. Those are not feeling words.
Let's do a practice run. I'll be the person. You can ask me the questions.
Okay. So how are you feeling?
I'm feeling tired.
All right. Do you need a check-in for your tiredness?
Yes.
Okay. So what is your goal for this evening?
So this evening, my goal is to get this podcast finished, edit the podcast, eat, and get some laundry done.
Those are great goals. And if you need help, who can you go to?
No one.
So maybe yourself. You can go to yourself.
Yeah, I can go to myself.
Perfect. You got it. So like those are the questions that we ask during all meals. Just to like kind of like,
and this is to the kids.
Yep.
To kind of like, you know, break down, you know, so like, you know, that I'm tired. Well, because I'm tired, what do I need to have done today? So you kind of break it down for them so it doesn't seem like so much. Is that kind of the idea for stuff like that?
Yeah, and like check in with them to make sure they like
just
feel like they're feeling heard and like we know what their feelings are during that period of the day, you know?
Right. Okay.
In the morning, you know, your kid could be happy, and then after school you get back and you're like, oh, hey, how are you feeling? And they're like, oh, I'm super angry. And it's like, oh man, what happened throughout the day? Let's check in about this.
Okay. Actually, that sounds like a fantastic, just something to do with your kids, just you know, check in on them. Sometimes, like you said, I remember when I was a kid, I was the type of kid, I didn't tell my parents anything. I could have had the worst day at school. When I came home, my parents would be like, how was school? It was good. You know, just because I don't want to talk about it. So I was, it's good. You know, same old. But if, you know, I feel like that's a good way to get them to like really open up. Because I feel like, you know, obviously I did, you know, I grew out of that, but I feel like it's important for kids to be able to, especially to your parents, and you know them better than they know themselves. Well, I don't have a kid, but my parents know me. They knew me better than I knew myself when I was a kid. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I feel like if anybody that you need to be okay or you have that feeling of being, you know, you feel comfortable being vulnerable, opening up to them, it should be your parents or somebody. So I think like when I have a kid, I'm gonna do that. I like that actually. This is why I love these conversations, because I can take, you know, I'm educated now. I can take things we talk about and apply to my life. Did I interrupt you? I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I don't know if I have a third key to success for parents at the moment.
Okay. All right. And then, just the last thing, it's kind of back to the advice, but is there any type of like so I know, like you said earlier, you need to be able to like take things with a grain of salt, you know, have that like ability or that trait. Are there any other abilities or skills that you think would be that would help in being an employee or being like a worker in this field?
Self-care. It's a huge thing. You need to learn to do it. You got to take care of yourself. Like I said, you can't help others till you're willing to help yourself. And that includes like going home and doing something you love and not going home and just like hating life because you had a bad day at work. Like,
Right.
yeah, it's something I had to learn to do a lot because after bad days, I just wanted to go home and like even just drink. And I'm like, that's not a good coping skill. I need to go home and do something like that benefited me. Like, even if it's just like talking to my mom after work,
Right.
it's just little things that will really help you feel much better going into the next day.
Right. No, that makes sense. Yeah. Because like you talking about venting, I can vent your ear off. If you call me and ask about what happened today, I could, you talking about 2-3 hours. I'm just talking about just shit I went through today.
Yeah, it's a very good coping skill.
But I mean, fantastic conversation. I appreciate you for hopping on. Give them your socials. Where can they find you? You got a website, Miss Powers? Do you have a professional website?
I don't. I'm like the worst. Everyone's like, you need LinkedIn. I'm like, why? I work at the same job for 4 years. But I mean, probably social media that I'm most on is, of course, Instagram because I love photos of myself.
And the Packers.
Yeah, and the Packers. But that's just Emily Powers 444. And
Emily
then
Powers
Facebook
444.
the only other social media I really use.
Okay, well, y'all heard it here. If y'all need to reach out to Emily for any questions or advice, or if you just want to follow her for the support, y'all heard the Instagram. So yeah, I mean, I appreciate you for coming on. Hey, I need you to be by your phone because I'm gonna have you on the cast again. I'm telling you now, I'm gonna ask you to come on the cast again because I want to talk about I might try to get a little more in depth into some mental illness, but then I also want to talk about some other stuff that you do outside of work. So just be ready.
Yep.
Okay. Fantastic. Y'all heard it here. Uncle Strib here with Miss Powers. I appreciate you for coming on. Listeners, we thank y'all for listening, and we are out. We will catch you guys next time. Even if I touch a meal and do it through the pain, I don't need a pill. And life gon' get me down, but it won't break my will. Cause I've been chasing this so long, I can't give up. I won't give in, been through too much. I done prayed for the money, I done prayed for the fame. I done prayed that I will make a sacrifice and play this game. I done prayed that my life would never be the same. I done prayed